everyone. I am not sure that many of you will share with me my enthusiasm about neuroscience, but once you are in Module 4, where I introduce you to evidence from neuroscience, you will also find there the rationale why we actually need to look into this evidence. Education is a great discipline but cannot provide us with everything, with all the knowledge that we need in order to understand our students and also understand why we do what we do in our classes. Anyone who thinks that all evidence we need will come from education alone doesn't understand what education is. Education already is a mix of different disciplines. Every discipline is a mix. And when a discipline closes itself and no longer invites other discourses and other frameworks and concepts from other disciplines, then this discipline is likely to disintegrate or live its own, play out its own irrelevance. So for education to actually be an exciting field, we have to continue inviting concepts and ideas from other disciplines, and especially neuroscience that concerns itself with the biology of humans, well, and all kinds of creatures. So exciting things are happening, the whole world is buzzing, and I'm here to introduce you to a few of those. Now, I don't want to teach you about everything that we have in our PowerPoint, which I included in our module. I want you to click on those videos and watch them yourself, right? So very good lectures are here, so you sort of select the video, and here you get the arrow.
Anyway.
And you can play it. If you want to know how I downloaded those videos, well, there are many ways to download a video. My recent way is to go to this software, 4K video downloader. So I click on it and say that I like a specific video. Oh, look at this, it just took me straight to this website. Amazing. It's not what I wanted, because I wanted to show you something. So you look for, and by the way, I didn't pay it, you just look for a free downloader somewhere, and then you identify the software that talks to your computer, be it Macintosh or a regular PC. So what I do, I select the video I want, I copy the link to it, and then I go to the video here, I click on paste link, and I don't even have to what do I have to do? I don't even have to actually paste there. It just simply will download the latest video you are actually downloading. You can see it's here now already. It's a short video, it just came very quickly. Alright, so obviously I don't want you to become neuroscientists after this little presentation, but I do want you to actually get excited, and also as future teachers, I would like you to see a reason for collaborating with universities, especially with researchers who actually do work in neuroscience, and see how you could integrate the work from neuroscience into your own teaching in ways that are interesting and imaginative and definitely evidence-based, but looking at learning in new ways. So what's this picture here about, right? So I put this picture here to show you how strange the brain is actually. So and a lot of these recordings you have here, and this one here as well looks black, but if you sort of hover over it and then click this, good things happen, right? So I want you to watch it. So basically you can see that there's a strange thing happening here. The signal, let's assume, comes into your eye, maybe also into your ears, but you can see there is no straight line from the signal that comes into your eye into a brain, right? There's no pathway. Amazing things are happening, and that's because people would say you wouldn't have time to process all the signals that actually hit your eye. I mean, autistic people, you can see they are in pain because all signals hit their perception systems. They have actually filtering out problem, right? So you spend your life actually filtering out the meaningless in order to just focus on the things that you need to do. That's why we are such good focusers and we can actually get on with life. Whereas autistic people are in pain, they can't filter out the irrelevance, so they actually see everything. So they have a perception problem. But so what happens here, the signal comes in, but you actually are not really looking at it. You will only look into it as much as your top layers, the upper higher order systems will signal to you that maybe your assumptions about what you see or what you hear are wrong. Other than that, you just continue living through your past. It's interesting, we live through our past, not actually in relation to what's happening in front of us. We guess, right? We live in our experiences. Now, so this, I wanted to say that, and obviously there's a lovely video here by I think this guy David Eagleman. He's actually from Oxford, right? So this is I think BBC production. I would like you to listen to this and actually enjoy it, not see it as pain, but enjoy it. Just to give you a little bit an idea how fun a brain is, I will actually take you to this little video. I might actually make it more visible for you. Let's have a look like that. This is really funny. I'll show you what it does. We'll just play it a little bit.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Larry.
Hi, Edie.
Very nice to meet you, Edie. We're going to do a little demonstration here called the rubber hand illusion. It's going to be a little scary.
This illusion may look like fairground fun, but it reveals one of the most important new ideas in brain science.
Thank you. Right there. Good. And can you put this hand down right over here and just curl it up like the rubber hand's curled up a little bit? All right. Now, what I'm going to do is try to position the rubber hand so it looks like it's your own.
Okay.
Okay, could you imagine that being your own hand, kinda?
Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to stroke your fingers simultaneously, the rubber finger and your real finger, and hopefully this will convince you that the rubber hand is your own, that your brain will actually adopt this hand.
In the illusion, simply watching the rubber hand being stroked at the same time as the real hand is enough to trick the brain into adopting it as its own.
We like weird. And slowly but surely, you should feel that the hand you're looking at is actually part of your body.
Feels like you're touching my hand with that one.
Right, so it feels like this is your hand that I'm touching, right?
Yes.
You okay?
Yeah.
Good. Try that at home with your kids. Yeah.
Okay, so you can watch it yourselves at home to the end, but you can get the point. And the point is that we actually, how we perceive reality and what reality really is, it's kind of confusing and requires from us a little bit of critical thinking. So this idea of what we see and what actually is happening is already indicating to you in relation to this video that things are funnier than we thought. And it's very interesting because there's a lot of this discussion in schools that you have to do explicit teaching and you have to do all of that. And I always say you don't have to do explicit teaching, but what you need to do is to generate explicit and also implicit understandings in your students about things that they actually are doing. So there's a lot of this discourse in schools about the clarity of things. Things are clear. If you explain things the way you see them as clear, children will also see them as clear. I mean, no neuroscientist is buying it. It's just patting yourself on your shoulder and saying, well, you're doing well, kind of discourse, right? Things are very complicated. That we actually understand each other at all is a miracle. So I'm giving to you these little video clips, and this is another one here, so that you develop a little bit of a critical attitude towards not necessarily what other people say, but also towards your own expectations in classroom. When you think, I've worked so hard and I explained so well and they didn't understand, they must be sort of, come up with any assumption. The truth is that a lot of times children actually need more and need different things than we actually think they do, and that requires a little bit of work. Not all of not all understandings that would help us as teachers are available today, and that's why I invite you to actually doing some sort of exploration and watching and thinking about it, to actually see where the trends and the newest understandings, and hopefully that will help you to become more sophisticated in your thinking about teaching. So Jordan Peterson, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of him. I actually have written to him well before he was famous, and he's actually written to me back. So we had these mini exchanges together. Now he's extremely famous, makes millions and millions of dollars, and everybody wants a piece of him. But I included here not so much his lectures about social issues, but about psychology. They're very good lectures, and he's extremely good. So I want you to watch those bits that I included here. They're not very long. I have actually cut those lectures to give you a few bits and pieces that you might enjoy. What else I wanted to say? So you can actually watch it yourselves and read here a few statements from me. This is just for you to play. Now I have a few statements here. So if you actually go to our module, I'm just trying to find it. I have so many things open. So if you go to our module, where's our module? Right. So at the end I have included this picture here that summarizes. So this is our module 4 and sub-theme Neuroscience. I've included here this picture because I want you to think about it in terms of what it might mean to us in relation to designing activities. So the first one is we have evolved interpreting systems on top of our emotional systems. So what people say in neuroscience, your cortical systems, the new cortex that you have in your forehead, it's not necessarily a new thing completely. What it does the same things as your most primitive neurological systems that you share with crustaceans and God knows with what other creatures before. It does the same things, just a little bit in a more sophisticated way. So that's the difference. So we can exchange noises, and so can a monkey. We just do more of it in a bit more sophisticated way. So the same with all the systems that grew on top of your limbic and emotional systems. Right? They do the same things just in a more sophisticated way. And it's very important because I wasn't able to include all the neuroscience in here. So you have some articles there in your module 4 where I might have included some more texts. So this is a short version, I misspelled it. A short version of my paper with Amy Norman. So you might look at that. I just tried to extract only the text that has something to do with neuroscience from that article. This is the whole version of it, the long version of it, and here's another paper. So in this PowerPoint I didn't include everything I know about neuroscience, but across different texts you have in module 4 you will find these findings from neuroscience, and in relation to the first principle that we have evolved interpreting systems on top of our emotional systems, this surely will tell you that our learning is not just cognitive, it's not just logic, there's emotional. Our learning is actually both cognitive and emotional. And in fact, there is research by Antonio Damasio, that says that if you have a split between the emotional and cognitive, the decisions you will make for yourself will not be working for you. So there are some people who have had injuries, and they do not engage their emotional systems when they actually solve problems, and as a result they sound very logical, they sound very learned, but in fact they make mistakes. So you can see that we will need, whether you do mathematics or whether you do literacy exercises or literacy activities, you will need to actually integrate the emotional aspect of it, and it needs to be also sophisticated. The emotional aspect is not how do you feel about this movie. I mean, that's so simple. There's no science in it, right? So you will see that in module 4, I included some sophistication there from my own research, and I hope you can integrate it in your planning activities. Perception is problem solving, right? So there's this guy, the one who actually invented the rubber glove experiment, Ramachandran. If you really want to know him, let's have a look. How will we find him? Oh, this is another guy. So Ramachandran, VS, nobody knows his name. He's an Indian man, but he works in the States. So the most famous man in neuroscience.
This
Most prominent of San Francisco attorney.
Here he is.
They watch another person.
All right. So so that's his finding. Perception is problem solving. It's actually not his finding. Where I got it from is he designed the research on aesthetics, right? It's a complicated story. You will find some of that work in our module 4. And basically what he's saying, we don't see things. When we look at things, we look at them, things make sense to us, because every time you see something, you're seeing as a response to the questions you have on your mind, right? So whether you look at a painting, or you look at your room, or you look at this video, we don't see everything. What we see is something that is relevant to us, but somehow it answers to us a question or an urgency we have on our mind. You might think you have no question at this very moment in your head, but did you see that I just deleted something? Did you see that? Did you look at it? Or did you look at, I mean, before I deleted that, were you looking at this thing? Surely you weren't looking at it. It was irrelevant. Yet it was there, but you didn't see it, because what was important was here, this thing. And there's obviously an experiment on that done too. I'm not sure whether I have it here. What's this one? No, this is something else. This is about meaning. There's an experiment done on we don't see things. Who did that? Oh, I don't know who did that experiment. I know where you can find it, but I don't know. You see, I didn't include everything in your PowerPoint. But it is called The Monkey Business. And the best way, the monkey business illusion, right? So you click on it and you can find it. Now the best way to deal with this experiment is not actually do it yourself, but test your friend on it. So go, before you watch this video, get a friend and say, look, we're gonna solve this problem. You will do everything, because you cannot betray to your friend that there is a trap, right? You just can't tell them that. So you say to your friend, let's have some fun, there's something happening here, so let's watch the monkey business illusion, and we will have a game here. And you just do whatever they tell you, and you will see that we don't see. And it's very interesting. I actually have run this experiment on a lot of my, see how this is very, there are many versions of it, because people have done this experiment over a million of years, many times, and every time with the same result. I haven't seen this one, The Art of Misdirection. I'm just gonna watch it one day, maybe today after I finish with you. You see, that's how I learn things. I just explore. So let's get back to our little table here. Perception is problem solving. We see what's important to us, and that's extremely important to you as a teacher, because we explain explicitly to students, but somehow the link between their goals and values, we may not actually touch on it, and consequently, when we speak and when we explain, we actually produce responses to the questions that we have in our head, that we think that students should also have on their heads. But that's our assumption, it's not reality. There needs to be a research done here, how we can actually trigger a process for students to actually find answers to the questions that they, well, first of all, experience questions, because they come to the class and questions relating to literacy are not on their mind, maybe. So find a process that triggers those questions, which is the activity of literacy, and then be able to actually ask questions of themselves and find answers, which is the strategy for supporting reading, right? The strategy for supporting reading is different from the strategy for activating a need for literacy. So we activate the need for literacy, however we do it, I explain it in this module, but then we need to have tools enabling students to ask questions of themselves, identify, feel these questions, feel them, and then be able to somehow respond to these questions. So they use you or other sources of information as triggers for identifying questions, experiencing questions, and also maybe leading them to some answers of their own. Because at the end of it, the aha moment is their moment, not your moment. Thinking is a forward-looking activity. Well, it's exactly. So how do we do it in literacy? In literacy, we say to children, what's this letter? Put these two letters together, get the word out of it, think about it, how you're going to do this. Like, really, if there is no purpose in the activity, right? So designing a literacy activity, if there is no purpose, then the thinking that you want to generate in students is backwards looking. Do you remember how you read together A and B? Do you remember that double B is read as this and double something is read like that? Do you remember? It's backward looking. Forward looking is a creative activity. Let's do something. Let's decide on being useful. And everything children do relates to this goal. So the questions they will generate in themselves will be relating to these goals. The answers that they will generate in themselves will be about how to do the activity better. So thinking is a forward-looking activity. What I integrate depends on how I construct the goal. So we've spoken kind of about it, right? So I don't see everything and I don't ask questions of everything to myself. I basically, depending on how I construct the goal, that will determine the path, the things I will be exploring, and how I will also understand them. Because I will understand whatever I see in relation to the goal, not in relation to everything. What I see as me is socially constructed. Well, this is a simplification, but your identity, who you are, for example, is not something that popped into your mind today. It's a negotiation. It's a social construction, but maybe it is kind of negotiation, right? But your identity is a social vehicle. So how can I put it differently? Well, you know that when you come to school, people say to you, please do not wear bikini when you are with children in the classroom, because the message you are projecting with your clothing would then be something that socially we are reading maybe differently than you intend to, but that's how we do. So, please behave, right? So your identity cannot be just out there idiosyncratic, because you may actually you cannot be idiosyncratic in your actions, because people who are highly idiosyncratic, we call them spinsters, we call them weird, we call them impossible to live with, or to employ, right? You cannot be idiosyncratic. You have to act, so whoever you are has to be integrated with the rest of people somehow, so that you can actually be a champion of many contexts, not just of your own context, in your own head. What we've drawn is, and in terms of literacy, implication to literacy, it's at best I can come up, well, at best, I mean, I can come up with the idea of Pierre Bourdieu. We spoke about it, which is expose children to many challenges, to many community contexts. Or when an activity, the literacy activity, has is constructed, is embedded in the community, then people the personal and social capability, then people construct ideas of themselves and of others in relation to the feedback they get in the context of that community activity, as opposed to in a narrow context of a relationship between teacher and a student. That's a very narrow context. So their identity is kind of, raw. It's not developed because they haven't been praised by a 70-year-old woman in an aged care saying to a child, "You did so well. It was such a beautiful thing to do. I really enjoyed whatever the children do for aged care centers or for whatever context you will engage them in." We learn by relating, not recording information. Okay, so schools are very good with word lists. I mean, for 300 years, don't take me too seriously on this one, but in every school, teachers love word lists on the walls. Maybe it's a good idea. I don't know. But one thing I wanted to say to you is the children who have a very, very good memory are very, very bad with, unless they train themselves, they're not very good. In comparison with people who suffer of amnesia, regular children are no good with memorizing lists. People who have amnesia, and amnesia is an illness, which means people with amnesia have no memory. Right? If a person has an amnesia and you ask them what they did yesterday, they can't remember. But it gets worse. When a person with amnesia sees an orange glass, that's why I drew here an orange glass. So if a person with amnesia sees on a paper an orange glass, or on a table, okay, sees a table, an orange glass on the table, a croissant or oatmeal, and a coffee cup, and a newspaper, and if you ask them to generate a context, in which context would there be a situation, a coffee table, a cup of coffee, an orange juice, oatmeal, or a croissant, or something like that, they will have no clue, because they can't put together things. But they will remember much longer lists of items than a regular person. Whereas a regular person, coffee table, coffee cup, croissant, newspaper, breakfast. A stereotypical picture of a breakfast, right? We do it in 3 seconds. A person with amnesia will not know it. They can't relate information, but they can retain long lists of things. So the idea of exposing children to lists so that they remember may be less healthy than it was assumed in the past. Let's also remember that a lot of that wisdom that came to us, from the past, comes from, we're only in the 21st century. 100 years ago, our parents probably didn't have water to wash our hands in, right? So a lot of people didn't have toilets. Science was not really where it is today, and technology was not where it's today, and our conceptual thinking was not as distributed. I mean, obviously there were people who were of equal intellect as today, but it would have been 1 here, 2 there, and 13 there. But now we have this intellect distributed sufficiently for us to actually have expectations of of specific cultural knowledges from each other. So teaching people lists and by drawing on concepts from 3 million years ago, that's really dinosaurs methodology. We need to now push ourselves some more and be innovative about how to support relating, not just remembering lists. Mind you, remembering lists is a good exercise. Remembering entire texts, memorizing entire texts is a great exercise. Poetry, memorizing maybe passages from texts, excellent idea. Why? It exercises young children's memory. It teaches it and expands. It builds the muscle. It's a great skill. Plus, also a lot of words will not come to anyone just by reading them or just by hearing them. You also have to actually say them, right? You have to, there are words for it and I'm not going to use them. I'm just going to use the old vocabulary for it because everybody understands. You've got to develop this active control of those words, and you can only develop it when you actually use it. So, and memorizing is one way to begin to use it. So we learn by relating, but this doesn't mean that we have to exclude memorization of passages and so on. So it's really lovely here. We have a few principles to think about pedagogy, and they're really cool. Now, what did we learn from this experiment on the rubber hand? I think that two things. That the mind is, as I said before, a sophisticated organ, or maybe a primitive organ, call it as you wish. It is a sophisticated organ and you can fool it. Now, don't quote me on it, but I think they've done the same experiment where the rubber hand was no longer a rubber hand. They were stroking a table and people thought that the table was part of their body. Now, that's funny, isn't it? So, not only that our brain is complicated, but also it also teaches us how the boundary around us is I try to use the word constructed because I think that it is overused and people don't really know what that means because they don't investigate what it may mean. But the boundary around us, it's kind of a negotiated space, right? So you feel closer to your family, you feel closer to your children. You love all children, but you feel closer to your children because you stroke them more often than the child in Germany or something like that. So they become part of your body. They suffer, you suffer. So, yes, so what does it say to us? I think that it's a human, I would say it's part of human nature to have this boundaries, that's kind of bodily boundary or your around yourself. That's great, but you don't need to love every child in Germany and in Brazil the way you love your children. But in terms of a literacy classroom, you would really want to know that there is a Brazil and then there are children there and they, so it is this cultural and intercultural and ethical capability that deals with it. What kind of demographics, what kind of symbols, what kind of cultural elements do we integrate in our literacy activities? Are we generating children that have a broader awareness of the world around them, or a narrow awareness, right? So we've spoken about it in this unit before. Nice principles, lovely to remember, based in neuroscience. So throughout this unit, this module, you'll find references to it. So in Mordino Young is this one, perception is problem solving, so that's Ramachandran. Thinking is a forward-looking activity, that's Ramachandran. What I integrate depends on how I construct the goal. That would be many people, but I would say Jordan Peterson. What I see as me is socially constructed. That Peterson talks about it, your identity being a social vehicle. It's not just You cannot be, and he draws on this one he draws on Piaget in relation to this principle, because Piaget talks about being the master of many contexts, not just of one context. So you are good for yourself, you're good to your family, you got good to your broader family, you got to you're good to your neighbor, you are able to deal with friends, you are able to be actually a nice person in at work, right? So your context expands. So your identity is a social vehicle, and you grow as you in relation to the context in which you interact, and you interact in the way that works for you and for the people who are around you. So it's Peterson. What I draw on is our experience. Well, where did I get this one from? There, I mean, everybody says this. So there's a nice quote from Peterson here, Jordan Peterson, that and it's in that paper with me and Amy Norman, where he says we see more of our past that we see more of, when we act, we see more of our past than of what's in front of us. And we learn by relating, not recording information. So that's a research by a famous person. I'll just show you. She, Eleanor Maguire, something like this. Let's have a look at her name. I don't know how to spell her, because in English. Yeah. So that's her. This is actually the lecture from which I got it. It's a very good lecture. You may not want to find time and watch it. The Neuroscience of Memory.
Many august speakers have stood in this theatre over the years, contemplating the nature of the universe.
All right. So what she did, she's the person who's behind this famous study on London taxi drivers, when they found out that London taxi drivers, London is huge, and if you're a taxi driver, before GPS, and even with GPS, you still have to know the map of London in your head. So there's a hippocampus area which is responsible for your memory, and it actually showed that the taxi drivers of London, they had a bodybuilding muscles in the hippocampus, which is the area for memory, right? So they grew a thicker and bigger memory area in their brain. But she's done a lot of other work here, which is really, really interesting. Sometimes in this unit I actually expand on this a bit more, but this semester I think I'll just leave it here. Any of you who are absolutely freaks about neuroscience like I am, you can actually watch it. These lectures are done, funny, these lectures are done at the Royal Institution. So it's like the Mecca of science in London. And basically what they have lectures on different topics there to the public, so people like you and me can actually understand it. So I watched it, it's very interesting. So she and this other guy, and they are quoted in the paper by myself and Amy Norman. So it's in your lecture. This is the old, so it's here in this paper, so you can read the shorter version. So you get a whole footnote, actually, not footnote, whole reference for it. So that's where they actually mention this principle we learn by relating, not by recording information. Right? So she's done the work with this other guy, and that's the outcome of their research: relating, not recording information. So I have some other things here, and I might actually try to explain it to you. This is from a paper I presented in China. I included it here because what I do. When you are a researcher, you love your own work. So there, I included that. Oops, it's not really showing very well in this way. So, okay, so not this. So why technology? Why use technology? So we have three functions. Technology has three functions. Computers store information, they connect information, and they also enable random access. Some of you may not know what's random access, which means you can actually find things at random. So remember how I just typed Eleanor Maguire and we found her instantly, right? So I didn't have to, go to the library and whatever. The computers have this algorithm written that if you type something, you will find it, right? So computers store information. So for example, books, and you go click on the link and you find it. Computers connect, so you've got your Wi-Fi, and you can talk to people, right? So that's that. But what happens here? Computers enable random access. They have what is this thing here? These squares. That's a process. That's a process. And if you actually use the random access capability of computers, you can actually support process. Right? So the process of learning or thinking can be very well supported because people can make use of this random access algorithm that is made possible through technology, and then actually they can look for information that is personally relevant to them. Now, it's not just Google and it's not just YouTube. I have produced some things for you in this module, but the work of Andrew Lian, my husband, is absolutely way more sophisticated than this. And you can actually do all kinds of, you can actually pull out any bit, really bit, or half of a bit, any bit of information, and link it with other bits of information in order to see things differently, right? So depending how you actually write the search algorithm, you will find different things. And that flexibility of computers enables people to look for things, many different things, and organize them and relate them in many different ways. And this supports their processing, right? That's very interesting. So technology is very good, not just for Google, but you always hear from people who don't actually know about technology much. The technology is very good because its capacity of storing and connecting facilitates things, but usually research stops here. But the real quality of technology, or the winning aspect of technology for educators is actually the random access capacity, so that people can now personalize the answers they find according to the questions that they feel. And that's where research should be. And a lot of it is, but a lot of it isn't, because people stop here. Let's get people connected so they can talk to each other, right? Well, that's good, but it's only a bit of, not everything that computers can do. Computers can do more. So I will talk about it in terms of literacy, in terms of our module 4, and in the sections that deal with middle and high school, and also in the sections that deal with early childhood and transition. But I wanted to flag it to you so that you actually know it too. Alright, so, and this is where research is. In order to facilitate processing, we need to understand the process. And you can see that the reason why I introduce you to neuroscience, and it's not only because I use evidence from it, but you need to understand the process so that you can facilitate the process, right? So that's why it's important. And then you can use technology to actually enable people to individualize the ways in which they actually process information, right? Because technology can do more than a single teacher with 25 children. We will come back to it in the specialized themes of Module 4. Okay, so, so I had some other information here in this, so you can read it for yourself. So this, why random access is important, because your brain also doesn't see objects. Your brain breaks reality into parts. It sees lines, colors, outlines, features, So it has it. So before it sees an individual, it actually constructs individual from different things into which the brain breaks reality. Right. So it's very interesting. So this higher order construction is actually distributed across diversity of systems that are being related by you, and they result then in your head into the face of your auntie or your partner. What else do we have? We fill in the missing parts and construct a complete world. So this one is about, right, just to show you how little we actually see, in order to actually believe that we see 100% of things. So multisensory processing, just please read about it. So information comes into your ear and you think you heard it, but you didn't. It went to your higher order thinking, it got processed, then goes back into your ear and you say, oh my goodness, she said mother, right? Now all vocabulary is distributed. You can, the idea that you can teach vocabulary by itself is actually, again, is sort of this misnomer and an archaic concept in education. So that was a nice research done here. This is Eleanor McGuire here. So her research, what she is saying is that when you are a normal person, you will never draw bananas the way they are. See, the patient draws bananas the way they are, very right in your face. But if you're a normal person, you will draw bananas kind of in this context, larger context. You kind of lose the bananas. But the patient who has amnesia, has no memory, draws perfectly the object as it is. A regular person needs to create a boundary. So I wondered to myself, if we do it naturally, so this idea of Piaget's child, you see here, that's why I put the Piaget's, this is, you will read the module 4, you will find out. So she has to draw a triangle, but she's compelled to draw a square. And then a teacher will point to her that there is an angle here, a kind of a peak. So she will draw another square on top of it. And we may think that, oh my goodness, what's wrong with the child? She's still young. She's blah 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 blah. We can come up with any explanation, but now then, one would need to do more research. But I would suggest that maybe this kind of not drawing exactly as it is, it may actually have more to do with the idea that we are compelled to see more and put things in context than people who actually are brain damaged, right? So these are the brain damaged people. You would think that they have the best drawings. They should be the great, the very normal people, and these should be sick people, but it's the other way around. What else do I have? Oh, here, this is the thing about, amnesia, so I put it in here for you. This is about emotional processing. So you can see amygdala is somewhere here on the bottom, and it's connected through, I might do this, just see how it works. Through these wires here is connected to every single place of your brain, and then through these two wires is connected to your frontal cortex, and then it has wires here so that to connect the left cortex and right cortex. Amygdala is responsible for your emotions. Look at this. Everything you do is emotionally based. So when I will teach you the reading for emotion model, you will say, why? Because your intentions when you read or when you write have an emotional basis underneath it. You say things because you have an intention, and this intention has an emotional foundation. Do you want to insult someone? Do you want them to feel happy? What, depending on the emotional intention you have, what emotion you want to evoke in them, you will write differently or read things differently. And you do that, and the emotions are so important because they're everywhere. So you see an object here, and your perception goes to the left, right to the emotion. When you see, your perception is divided to the emotion and to the memory. And then memory goes back to the emotion. That's how important is emotion in learning and in seeing and in perceiving and in problem solving everywhere. So this is the aesthetics. We will be doing some work on it in Module 4. I will introduce you to it. This is the work of Jordan Peterson. He explains his theory, I think, in the earlier slides in this PowerPoint, but I kept this slide here just to do that. He is something, and he is the same, and he is the framework I developed with Amy Norman for integrating technology into school curricula. What you can read is the learning is the evidence from science, activity is the implication, and technology is basically not about technology really. What it is, it's about how sophisticated tools we need to integrate in our teaching in order to actually support the learning process as described here on the basis from neuroscience. Right, so I call it technology because we sold the paper as technology paper. But really, technology here means what sophisticated mechanisms or resources or mechanisms or tools we need to put in place in order to support the learning as described in neuroscience. So we have developed each of those activities and technology aspects in relation to each of the capabilities, so that to organize them nicer. So that's our lecture in this PowerPoint. I hope you will enjoy the PowerPoint and have fun with it, because that's the idea of this theme for in Module 4. I just want you to have some fun and get some ideas.